Thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to interchange with you afterwards. It's a hot summer evening, a little bit hotter outside, but the air inside is worse than outside. No, this is the trade-off, but we will manage this, I suppose. So I listened to the introductory remarks regarding the transformation perspective. I will focus also on transformation issues from my perspectives, and I will do this in 3 steps. I will go to argue why it is so important to act rapidly. I will do this quickly, but I want to emphasize it because if we talk about profound transformations, we really need very good reasons for that. We are putting the society, the economy, people, citizens under stress. So in the sense of Immanuel Kant, handeln aus guten Gründen, acting based on good arguments. We need good arguments to boost the transformation towards implementation. The second step is then about where do we stand in the transformation? I mean, we see many backlashes. We also see many trends moving into some correct directions. I would like to show you from my perspective, conceptually, but also based on my political advisory role, where we stand currently. And I would be interested whether this is converging with your perspectives or diverging in order to learn and to understand better where we are in this situation of transformation. I would say that we are in the middle of it, in a transition period within the transformation, but I will go into the details afterwards. And then at the very end, I will have 2 or 3 slides on bifurcations. So when I'm looking at the European Union, the European Green Deal, I see 4 big bifurcations where we might move into the right direction or exactly into the wrong direction. And I would be interested to go with you into the discussion about these bifurcations. This is what I wanted to do with you during the next 30 minutes or so. And I start with why it's time to act. And as I said, I will be very, very brief because you are all experts on that anyway. But let me arguing on the next 3 slides why I think it is so urgent to move forward quickly. The first one is about the whole tipping point discussion. I'm not going into the details. You know the tipping points, large-scale changes in the Earth system, which with large-scale impacts on societal dynamics of development, and therefore relevant for the basic structures of human survival and existence. And the important point which I wanted to make here is only one. The point is that if I would have spoken to you in 2010, 2012, I would have argued based on the models of these days that the tipping point arena is starting around 3.5 and beyond that in terms of global temperature rise. This has been the reason to go for 2 degrees or even 1.5 to 2 degrees global warming as a limit, as a boundary in Paris during the climate negotiations. We wanted to build in a buffer. And in 2010-12, we had, compared with our models, we had a buffer. Now the same models developed further with more data, with better conceptual knowledge, are arguing that already around 2 degrees, some argue that below 2 degrees, we are moving into some of these tipping point areas. And if you would have time, you could go into the different tipping point arenas. There are a dozen or so out of that. I will only mention one. One is that, and here the convergence is that around 2 degrees, we expect tipping point regarding the Greenland ice shelf in the Arctic. And this is about 7-meter sea level rise over long periods of time. Irreversible sea level rise over long periods of time. And this implies that the urgency to act, to avoid not to move into these difficult and dangerous territories is very important. And as you all know also, we are currently not in a 2 degrees global warming pathway. We are on a 2.6, 2.7 to 3, or even beyond this pathway. So urgent action needed. This is number one. Number 2 is that, fortunately, global business leaders know about it, which is actually a good starting point. This is from the WEF, World Economic Forum's risk report. They are publishing this risk report every year. I saw, preparing for the slides, sitting in the car, I saw that this is from 2020, but the latest data from 2024 are demonstrating very similar results. The main point is, if you ask global decision makers in the economic sphere, where are the important risks and challenges for your businesses, Most of them argue that looking at 10 of the risks, the first X ones are actually related to climate change and Earth system challenges. Now, at the latest report, we saw that wars and cyber attacks are gaining importance, but even though around the cyber attacks and the wars, Earth system challenges. So it is well known, and we as climate scientists, natural science-based climate scientists, social science-based climate scientists, we did a good job, because people at the top of the decision pyramid, they understand what it is at stake. So the third element I wanted to highlight briefly is successes and challenges when it comes to European environmental goals, which have been defined around the European Green Deal. Here you have all of them, and you can see the green ones. Are they green ones? No, you can see the black ones, or blue, dark blue ones. There we are on track. You see the likely off track, the yellow ones. Most of the goals are likely off track. This is the overall panorama. Still many things to do. We have not achieved the goals which we defined 5-6 years ago. And I'm showing this data because when I'm talking now to business people in the national arena, in the European arena, many business people, when I'm talking to my colleagues from the BDI, der Bund der Deutschen Industrie, the industrial organization here in Germany, many argue now, backlash, many argue now that we have concentrated so much energy and investments to reach these goals, to achieve these goals. Now we have to focus again on competitiveness. Because our concentration has been here. But what you can see is the goals which we, from a scientific perspective, based on environmental science, based on Earth system science, based on climate sciences, we are still not at all there. We have been moving into the right direction, but there is a lot of stuff still to do. This is the message here from this slide. So let's move into the transformation dynamics and how I'm looking at that. And I brought you some slides to illustrate different kinds of trends. There are trends into the right direction, trends into the wrong direction. So it is not absolutely clear what we are actually in with regard to the journey which we are part of. So let's start with a very positive notion. When I started to become the president of the German Environment Agency in 2020, I was really, by character, I'm an optimist, but in 2020, I was very optimistic because I spoke about the coming decade, the 20th, as the decade of implementation. So now all things are on the table, well prepared, let's do it. And my perspective was based on the following observation. In 2020, 2021, I observed, this translation is necessary to comment on, frequency condensations. Anyone understand that? No, okay. It is difficult to translate what I want to say. The term I'm interested in for the German-speaking people in the room is Häufigkeitsverdichtungen. A wonderful German word, but very difficult to translate, as you can see here. So Häufigkeitsverdichtung is a term which I'm borrowing from Osterhammel. He is one of the most well-known historians in Germany. He did a wonderful book about the Verwandlung der Welt im 19. Jahrhundert, the transformation of the world in the 19th century, so the transformation from the agrarian societies to industrial societies. And he's showing empirically then which kind of dynamics we can observe in the period of transformation from agrarian to industrial societies. And he's introducing the term of Häufigkeitsverdichtungen, arguing that if you see many trends moving into a new direction, into a different direction, transformation, coming from different sectors of the society, the cultural one, the economic one, the science-based one, if you see these kind of agglomerations of trends into a new direction, transformation might really take place. Because at the beginning of any transformation, there's only a new trend. In one sector, in the other sector, all the rest is path dependency. So Häufigkeitsverdichtung. So my point here is that I saw in 2020, 2021 Häufigkeitsverdichtungen towards transformation. And I observed the following, to illustrate what I'm arguing for. I saw the decision of the Constitutional Court here in Germany, the Bundesverfassungsgericht. the decision on climate, the decision on climate, arguing that climate is about democracy, climate is about basic human rights, climate is about protecting the rights of future generations. We need to go, based on our constitutional setting, towards climate protection. Wonderful. No? I also saw in this period the European Green Deal, which I already talked about. And the European Green Deal has been designed and put into the political arena from a conservative, Ursula von der Leyen, from a conservative politician. Even better, not from the bubble, but from the conservative part, because I'm convinced that the transformation from a societal point of view is only possible if we get broad understanding in the society that these kinds of changes are needed. So the European Green Deal, the most ambitious green economy project in the global economy, which makes, therefore, a difference. We had the Biden government. It's difficult to remember, but Biden came after Trump. Do you remember that? So Trump left in 2020 or so, and Biden came back with his US Green Deal, moving into a similar direction compared to the European Green Deal at the European continent. We forgot that already. We had also Fridays for Future in the streets, young people, global civil society mobilizing for this transformation. And we had in the private sector, I already talked about the BDI, the German Organization of German Industries. They published a report in 2021 about climate neutrality and in 2045, our new business concept. So also industries in the private sector moving into this direction. So we have been coming very far already, and based on that I was optimistic. And since then we are seeing several backlashes, and then I'm coming back to these backlashes, of course, but we shouldn't forget that this stuff happened, and how can we mobilize elements of that for next steps to do. Okay, so let's look into some conceptual considerations when it comes to the transformation from a socio-economic perspective. And I'm showing you, I think, 3 concepts to illustrate how I think about the transformation. The first one here is borrowed from Mainz and Sharp, the former directors of the Max Planck Institute for Gesellschaftsforschung, Max Planck Institute for the Society or Societal Change in Cologne, and they developed a concept which they call actor-oriented institutionalism. And what they try to argue is that if you look at the society, trying to understand whether change is happening or not happening, they are looking at 5 levels. You can see these 5 levels here as headlines: values and norms, cognitive concepts, innovation, policy regimes, actor change, and power relations. So look at these dynamics, trying to understand where in the society, which kind of change or only incremental dynamics are actually taking place. And when I'm looking at this process, you see in the middle the transformation curve. So we try to come from a non-sustainable society and economy on the left-hand side of the diagram towards a sustainable future orientation of our societies. And what is happening at these 5 levels in 2020 and currently. And I'm looking at 3 of the examples because we have limited time. Let's start with cognitive concepts and heuristics. So actors do act based on relevant and hegemonical cognitive heuristics and concepts. And as I already said, in 2020, I argued that we have been successful because our concepts of the European Green Deal, our concepts of climate neutrality, our concepts of planetary boundaries, all of that became relevant for many actors, as I demonstrated beforehand. So things have been changing in this domain of cognitive concepts. If we look today on these kind of issues, we are observing backlashes because several of the actors which are highlighted beforehand are now moving again into the other direction. We can discuss this later on. So I saw progress and I'm seeing backlashes. When you look at policy regimes and institutions, my picture here is the following. The European Green Deal, if I take this as an example to organize a transformation towards sustainability, put in place many policy changes, many institutional changes, moved into the arena many instruments, and now we can observe that we have a huge debate, and I'm coming back to my own judgment, we have a huge debate about bureaucracy trends which are undermining our innovation and economic capabilities. This is where we stand. No? So we made progress in the sense of policy changes trying to trigger ecological or socio-ecological transformation, but now we have this very controversial debate, which I'm coming back to in a second. So back and forth. No? When I'm looking at innovation and technology, I'm still optimistic. Yesterday I presented with the German environmental minister here in Berlin, a new study which UBA, our organization, has been publishing. It's called the Green Tech Study, the Green Tech Atlas. No? And what we are demonstrating there is that in cooperation with Prognos, we showed that what we call green tech segments of our economy are large. 10% of our national economy is green tech based. They are growing much faster in terms of value added. The employment in these sectors is growing much faster than anywhere else. The exports are more stable and growing more faster. And the business guys in this field are much more optimistic than in many other fields. No? So meanwhile, we have the narrative out there, if you look into the newspapers, that now climate change might become very challenging and very expensive. We should first look on competitive now and see how we move forward on the ecological front later on. The data is showing that these ecologically oriented sectors and industries and business concepts are very successful. No? So there is a lot of potential to move into this direction. Let's have a look on the second concept which I very much like to work with, which is focusing on a different angle of the transformation. From my perspective, the whole transformation towards sustainability is not only an economic process, it's not only about investments, it's not only about innovation, although this is very important. I talked about it a second ago. From my perspective, from my broader perspective, I'm always arguing that the transformation is a civilizational and cultural challenge. No? We are arguing many of our studies, you highlighted that I have been the co-chair of the German Advisory Council on Global Change for many years. We published a study in 2010, 2012 about the great transformation towards sustainability, comparing the transformation we are arguing for with the Industrial Revolution, the Neolithic Revolution, so large-scale societal change. No? And this is related to deep structures of our societies. And what I'm showing you here is Daniel Kahneman. Many of you might know him. He's a psychologist and economist at the same time. As a psychologist, he got the Nobel Prize for Economics. His most famous book is Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. No? And what he's arguing is that 10 to 15, maximum 20% of our decisions are being based on rational choice kind of thinking. We are looking at the data, we are looking at arguments and making decisions. No? 15 to 20% maximum. All the rest, 80%, 85%, is based on our emotional settings, it's based on our routines, and it's based on the heuristics we believe in. If we wouldn't do so, we would become crazy all day long because we have to do hundreds and hundreds of decisions all day long. No? So why is this relevant for our transformation discussion? First, two arguments based on this concept. The first point is that we are basing, we just said many of you are academics, no? I'm myself an academic. We are basing our strategy to argue towards transformation on facts and figures and science. No? But only 15 to 20% of our decisions are based on that. So this is the first point. Let's think about this. This is about communication, how we get engaged with other people. And the other thing is that when I'm arguing that the transformation is about cultural and civilizational change, what we need to change in all our heads is the other system. No? The thinking fast system of beliefs and heuristics, which we know about, which we believe in. We have to change those. And this is very difficult. No? And this is why I'm citing here John Maynard Keynes, who said, the development of new concepts and ideas is very easy for us. To forget the old ones, that's really difficult. No? And this is the thinking fast dimension, the 80% of our decision-making processes. This is about path dependencies of many kinds, and we need to think about this. Therefore, the time dimension of transformation is very important, understanding how we change our mental maps. It's dangerous to change very radical our mental maps because we believe in our daily decision makings in these kind of behavioral settings which we used to trust about. No? Okay, so this was a second concept which I wanted to highlight. I brought you a third concept which is about the same dimension. It's about the cultural and civilizational challenge because, as I said, I believe that beyond economics and institutions, it's about cultural and civilizational challenges which we need to talk about much more. And I found in 2010 a wonderful book written by Anthony Appiah. He is a philosopher from Ghana, now working in the United States, in New York, and he wrote a book about moral revolutions. And I was interested in moral revolutions because for me the transformation towards sustainability is about a moral revolution. No? And if you have time, it's only a 100-page book. No? So the Osterhammel book I already cited has 1,200 pages. This one is only 100 pages. No? So I recommend you to start here. And what he's trying to do is he's looking at moral revolutions in human history, so the end of child labor, the phase of enlightenment, or the era towards enlightenment, and things like that. No? And he tries to show patterns, or he's looking for patterns, which we could learn about, thinking about moral revolutions which we intentionally would like to trigger. No? And what he is finding, without going into any detail, and I'm aligning this with our transformation debate this afternoon towards sustainability, he's having in mind 5 steps here. No? So there is always a phase where a society, a group, a community, people start to argue that there might be a problem, no? Regarding climate, regarding arguing for enlightenment and having slaves in the backyard. No? So there might be a problem, something is wrong there. The next step is then, there is a problem. No? You need time to move from the first step to the second step. The next third element is then, we do have a problem. So moving towards, we have to act. No? And then the fourth one is, we need to solve a problem. We need to solve a problem. For me, the climate COP in Paris in 2015 was, we have a problem and we need to solve the problem. No? And the interesting thing with Appiah is his last step, I love it. No? His last step is that a moral revolution is finished, is done, when people, a group, a community, a country, a social constellation is looking back to what happened beforehand, from there might be a problem, there is a problem, and so forth, for arguing and questioning, how could we accept that? Slavery, child labor, the absence of rule of law, whatever. No? And in this sense here, how could we accept that we move into a disaster of tipping points in the Earth system, having all the facts and data around us for 30 years? No? Maybe Greta Thunberg, in this window of opportunities, she has been arguing into this direction. No? Now we are moving again backwards in parts of the society, and we need to think about why is this happening, and I'm coming to this in a second. So this is a third concept which I wanted to highlight, to show it to you. Now some empirical data. This looks very complex. What did I want to say about that? So now we are moving into, people are changing their minds. What is happening? No? We are publishing an environmental consciousness report. So what do people think about the environment, environmental policies in Germany? And we do this every year or every 2 years. And I would like to show you 2 slides only with the following arguments. Here's the first slide. And what I wanted to say is that you can observe that people arguing that climate change, the transformational challenges, these are the top issues on the agenda. Top number 1, top number 2. No? 66% of people, 65% of people argued this way in 2020, no? The golden moment of sustainability. And this moved down during the next 5 years towards 24 to 54%. So there is a significant decline. No? The good news is that it is still a majority, And if you add to this 54% arguing that this is really important, if you add to those arguing that it is important, you have to add to the 54% another 34%. And the argument which I wanted to make here and underline here, emphasize here, is that this is not a polarized policy field. Not a polarized field. If you look into migration data, you see that a large part of the population is arguing in favor, a larger other part arguing in contra. Here you see that most people, also with shifting priorities regarding the very important issues, are still in favor of being engaged in the transformation itself. No? So it's not polarized. This is what I wanted to highlight. The second issue which I wanted to show is that why is the priority list changing? And the priority list of people is changing because we have different problems and other problems. We talk about multiple crises. No? And of course, you can see this in the priority list here from 2024. And I'm not going into the details. I saw two important shifts which I want to highlight. I'm not going into more details, but I was not astonished by one, which I'm going to highlight in a second, but I was astonished by the other. And the other cluster of problems which people see as highly relevant is on the top of the agenda. So when you ask people what is for you your highest priority, the three most important issues which you are listening to is the state of the healthcare system, the state of the education system, and criminality and public safety. And interesting, the last one, criminality, not linked directly to migration, because if you move downwards, migration issues are coming beyond environmental issues, for example. No? And the first three, for me, are a signal that people have the feeling that the basic foundations of any society, so health, education, security, are eroding. I think that the link to democracy crises, this is here. No? Because if people see that there is an exogenous shock, US guy running wild, no? This is exogenous. But if you have the feeling that healthcare, education, security eroding, this is internal. This might be related to democracy not delivering. We need to have a look on that. No? So this was astonishing for me, and it is important to consider. The second field, which is then coming, talking about the multiple crises, are actually two in essence. The first one is wars. No comment on that. Everyone can look at this in the news. And the economic crisis related to social justice issues. No? And after these two big clusters, we are seeing then the transformation towards climate neutrality and European Green Deal stuff. No? So these are the shifts. So the priorities of attention, the Aufmerksamkeitsökonomie in German, no, has been changing. And these are arguments why things have been shifting around when it comes to these shifts in the society I highlighted beforehand, talking about the akteursorientierte Institutionalismus. Okay, so I think I will finish these different perspectives on the transformation and where we stand currently with this slide. Yeah, oh yeah, good. And then I'm coming to two last slides looking at bifurcations. No? So, what I wanted to make you aware of is that we also need to be, as a community, thinking about this transformation, working scientifically on this transformation, and then doing work practically in this arena. I wanted to make you aware that we have forgotten several elements which we see are so important now, which we have not been looking at substantially before the whole transformation started. No? I said that beyond 20, 21, 22, 23, many things happened into the right direction of greening the economy. So what have we forgotten? No? And I'm self-criticizing my own teams because we forgot all the three elements which I'm highlighting now in the study which we did in 2010 about the great transformation towards sustainability. What we forgot are problems which I'm calling second-order problems, second-order challenges. So the point here is that, or the point is not, that we have not been moving into the right direction. We moved into the right direction with the European Green Deal. The problem is that we forgot that doing this, we are creating waves and dynamics of counter trends, which we should have thought about beforehand. Second-order problems. No? And I think, and I would describe my own learning process, that if we started to argue in favor of the transformation, we understood the transformation as a problem-solving mechanism. No? So bringing the emissions down, bringing the risks down related to those, and so forth. No? We did not thought about deep transformation of a society and which kind of reactions are we going to see from society and societal actors. No? So 3 examples here, very quickly so. The first one is that we underestimated hugely that transformational policies towards green economy do have impactful social consequences which we should have thought about more intensively. Let's take the Heizungsgesetz, the heating system debate here in Germany as an example. No? So we wanted to bring down the emissions in this sector. In the heating systems is related to 30% of our emissions, more or less. No? And we forgot that for 20-30% of our population living in old houses, badly energetically equipped, this is a very important cost factor. No? And we got a reaction with regard to exactly that. And there are many other examples showing that for many people the perception is that climate change is something for rich people. Climate change is something for upper middle class people. For people below, from the below of the 50% of the bottom of the income pyramid, this is a challenge and a danger. No? I can show you I mention to you the data from the Environmental Consciousness Report again. 90% of people are convinced that we need the transformation. But 40% are convinced that the transformation they are arguing for is going to destabilize their social and economic status. If we don't get this right, no, from the beginning, we will not move in the right direction. In parentheses, as you might have shown, the government today argued that they will not reduce the prices for electricity for consumers. I think this is a huge mistake. No? We will get the ETS2 pillar, emission trading scheme pillar, in Europe, so also in Germany, in 2027, starting to price market-based emissions in the housing sector and in emissions in the mobility sector. People will feel next day that these are damages for their household incomes, obviously. If we don't balance this, if we don't shape this in a social perspective, we will run into very difficult terrains. Second order effect number 1. Second order effect number 2, the modernization of the state. I talked about the bureaucracy discussion which we have, which is in part very destructive, because we need regulation, we need institutional settings, obviously. But what I want to argue is that we cannot do the transformation we are arguing for with high speed, what we also are arguing for, bringing down the emissions every decade by 50% is what Uber is arguing for in Germany and globally. We cannot do this with the routines of our statal behavior and our state and public action, which is the routine of the last 40, 50 years, which is looking at incremental changes. Meanwhile, we are asking for profound societal and economic change, even civilizational change. So we need to think about different types of reorganizing the state. In the discussion, we can move into this if you are interested. We oversaw that, and now we have a problem here, which we have to discuss urgently. I will leave it by these 2 examples in the sake of time. And let us come to the last 2 slides I wanted to show you before we move into the discussion then. So the last step is, I said, about bifurcations. Maybe I show this for the discussion if necessary. The following bifurcations are, from my perspective, important to understand. If I'm looking at the European Green Deal, and if I'm talking to parliamentarians in the European Parliament, and if I'm listening to decision makers here in Berlin, I see 4 bifurcations when it comes to the European Green Deal, where we need to work hard to move into the right direction and avoid backlashes. So these 4 bifurcations are the following. I'm starting on the left-hand side there, the economic perspective. When it comes to the economic narrative for Europe, we have a 40 to 60% constellation in the European Parliament. 40% of parliamentarians in Europe are nowadays arguing, and this has been shifting towards their kind of position, no? Are arguing what I already highlighted, that now it's the time to focus again on growth first, competitiveness first, because climate change protection is costly. And if we have time in the future for climate issues and environmental issues, we might recombine it again. Growth first. No? Remember how I started, the reasons why we need to act. We cannot ignore those. So for me, this narrative is unacceptable, but it is strong. No? 40% of political fractions and political and parliamentarians in the European Union are arguing this way now. Then there is another narrative, and we need to work hard for it because it is eroding. And the other narrative is that we have to combine and integrate innovation and economic prosperity concepts and institutional settings with climate change and planetary boundary aspects. If we don't get this stuff right, this is the basic idea still of the European Green Deal, we run into disasters. How the global CEOs in the World Economic Forum risk report underline. No? So, but this narrative is weak now, and we need to work for it. And this is the first bifurcation. The second bifurcation is the modernization of the state. I do not need to go into the details again. We could go into the details again. I'm advocating now with Uber, and we did not enough work in this field for something which we are calling currently progressive debureaucratizations. The basic idea is how to maintain ambitious climate and environmental and planetary goals, but with less economic burden. How to do that? And we are working now on solutions into this direction. No? If there is interest, we could discuss it a little bit. I would like to mention the third element here, the social dimension of the European Green Deal and climate and planetary transformations. And I only need to remember you that I said how important the social dimension of the transformation is, and we are at a bifurcation. I mean, what I highlighted a second ago about the electricity price, now forgotten to bring it down for consumers, is for me a step into the wrong direction. I hope we can correct it. I'm giving an interview tomorrow to highlight this kind of aspect, so there are tensions in the public sphere around it. This is the third bifurcation which I'm seeing. No? If we try to move into climate neutrality directions, European Green Deal directions, without taking seriously the social dimensions, we will fail. But there are trends into both directions. No? And the last element is then international cooperation. I can tell you in this field, you highlighted I've been working as a vice director of the United Nations for a period of time. I'm working a lot still with the United Nations on many issues. I mean, the picture is the following. No? We are learning the hard way now that in Europe we need to invest in security infrastructures, and I do not want to talk with you about 2% or 3% or whatever, but that we need to invest in this field. I'm agreeing on that, no? Which costs me a lot, I must say, because all this money would be so helpful also for the transformation towards sustainability. But I'm agreeing that we need to do something there. There is a new risk. No? But then the administration of Trump is moving backwards in any field of international cooperation on humanitarian aid, on development cooperation, on sustainable development, on climate protection, on planetary issues like ecosystem protection. 30% to 40% of global investments in these international cooperation fields are directly linked to the United States of America. And in this field, we are not working for and arguing for as Europeans that we are going to fill the gaps which the Americans, US Americans, are now producing. Instead, if you look at the international investments of Europe, they are also going down across the board in most member countries. And this is moving again into the wrong direction. If we don't deliver in this regard, we are running into a disaster, because how can we convince the below 50% of the income pyramid of the global population to move towards sustainability transformation, and at the same time we as still rich countries reducing our international cooperation efforts. This will not work. So this is also a bifurcation. Let me finish with one very simple idea, and I'm looking forward then to the transformation. Regarding our communication strategy, we are currently developing communication initiatives where we combine our climate and environmental orientation with co-benefits regarding other impacts, positive impacts for humans. No? So we combine climate and environment policies with human health. We combine climate and employment and environmental policies with quality of life in cities, for example. We combine it with human security, having in mind the impacts of the damages and loss and damage trends of climate change, which we saw in the Ahr Valley 4 years ago, 40 billion euros of damages during a night, which we saw in Valencia last year, which we actually see every month anywhere in the world. So focusing more on these co-benefit structures is something which we now invest more money in, because we have the feeling, and you saw this regarding the priority list of people, no? That the field of environment and climate does not speak any longer for itself. People have different and others and changing priorities. So the co-benefit strategy is an element to work against these currents, hoping to convince people in a better way. So I thank you for your patience, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.